Fox News Podcasts presents the Bret Baier Podcast with Fox News Chief Political Anchor Bret Baier.
This weekend saw a wave of violence overseas and here at home. On Sunday, during a Hanukkah celebration at Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia, two suspected gunmen opened fire, killing at least 15, wounding more than 40 in the deadliest mass shooting Australia has seen in decades. Law enforcement believes that the suspected shooters, a father and son duo, were likely motivated by anti-Semitic ideology. Two homemade ISIS flags also discovered in the trunk of their car. Back here at home, investigators are still searching for the suspect in a mass shooting that occurred Saturday in Rhode Island on the campus of Brown University, leading to the deaths of two students and injuring 9 more. The FBI now offering $50,000 reward for information that leads to the identification and arrest of the shooter.
We are renewing our call for the public's assistance in seeking any and all information about the shooter. No amount of information is too small or irrelevant. We are also here to announce the FBI is now offering a reward of $50,000 for information that can lead to the identification, the arrest, and the conviction of the individual responsible, who we believe to be armed and dangerous.
Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, President Trump signing an executive order Monday designating fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction as continued strikes happen in alleged Venezuelan drug smuggling boats off the coast of Venezuela. To discuss this, let's bring in our panel. Chief Communications Officer at Targeted Victory, Matt Gorman, Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today, Susan Page, and Fox News Senior White House Correspondent Jackie Heinrich. Jackie, hands have been full over there as far as topics. What has struck you most about the president's reaction to some of this as it's coming at him fast and furious?
Well, I think the news over at the White House today is about the Susie Wiles Vanity Fair article. And when you talk about Venezuela, there's a connection to all these topics, but Venezuela specifically, she had one quote in the article saying that he wants to keep blowing up these boats until Maduro cries uncle. That is, probably the most revealing comment that we've had from the administration on what the, articulated end goal is here, because we've had also the official sort of line that this is about interdicting drugs, while the sort of experts and analysts on the sidelines say, well, if this is really about drugs, you don't need 15% of, the Navy, U.S. Navy sitting in the Caribbean right now, including some of the assets that we have there that are specifically meant for things like, getting downed pilots behind enemy lines. So we're all reading those comments in the article with a bit of intrigue here. I will also say that I'm not at all surprised that the administration is rushing to her defense, and the president even and the vice president today, owning some of the statements that she made, which were candid, but also rejecting the framing of it as if it was something chaotic. For instance, her description of the vice president as a conspiracy theorist. He said today to a crowd, well, yeah, I've believed in conspiracies that are true, like the fact that kids shouldn't be masked at 3 years old when they need to develop language skills during the COVID pandemic. The president saying, yeah, it's true. I have an alcoholic's personality. I'm very forceful. And when I put my mind to something, it's hard to get me off of it. And I'm fortunate that I don't drink, over the line in that article that the president has an alcoholic's personality. So that's sort of the intriguing piece of news today, but it might be over tomorrow because the administration is trying to fire on all cylinders and shift the focus back to the economy.
Susan, those pieces, it's interesting. Those big profile pieces where there's like 12 sit-down interviews, never been a fan of those for the subject, if you're the subject, because you really don't know how it's going to be portrayed. That said, there are quotes in here. And, the White House is saying it's out of context, et cetera, et cetera. But to Jackie's point, Susie Wiles is arguably the most powerful White House chief of staff we've seen in a long time, and has the respect and ear of the president to the point where I don't think no matter what was in that article, there was going to be a problem for her.
Well, Bret, we should all hope that our employers will back us up like the White House backed up Susie Wiles today after we say something that is really out of turn. This wasn't from one TV interview she did for 5 minutes. This was 11 interviews over 11 months, some of them lasting as long as an hour, all of them apparently on the record and on tape, which is why the White House has reduced to saying that they were taken out of context as opposed to
Right.
saying she was misquoted. So this was the kind of thing that has undone previous chiefs of staff, but not this time. And it's a sign, I think, of how crucial Susie Wiles has been for President Trump. Clearly, the most influential chief of staff he's had during his 2 terms.
Yeah. And Matt, I guess, reading between the lines, saying that he's going to keep bombing these boats until Maduro gets scared and leaves, kind of lifts the veil on what's going on.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the strategy here has been very clear. And to kind of go back to that fentanyl point, right? The way I think of this, it puts pressure on China and Mexico. I mean, you don't label something a weapon of mass destruction unless you're prepared to escalate, whether it's diplomatically, economically, and, law enforcement wise. And, I think this could be a part of that. But obviously, there is a very serious pressure campaign on Maduro. And I'm very curious when Trump speaks in his Oval Office address, does he touch on it? Is it only about cost of living and some more domestic issues, or does he talk about Venezuela and connect it to fentanyl and the like?
How is this, Jackie, primetime address, 9 p.m. Wednesday night, being portrayed? Is it kind of like an end of the year, touch all the bases, show how I'm working so hard on a lot of things, or is it a specific topic?
Well, we were told it's going to be basically a highlight reel of the last 11 months. And I think there's going to be a heavy focus on the economy. We do see the sort of nerves from the White House and Republicans after those off-year elections showed increased voter turnout. And certainly in the context of the last Trump midterm, which was tough for Republicans, the margins being even more narrow this cycle, and staring down the affordability issue where the president is just sort of vexed at why it is that Democrats are making gains on this affordability messaging when he can point to graphs that show that things were more expensive under the previous administration. They are trying to figure out the right way to get around that. And of course, his sort of reflexive way of pushing back on this is to say things like affordability is a hoax. You've got to be careful about that because you don't want to sound out of touch with the voters or make the same mistake that the Biden administration made by telling everyone that things are better than they feel. But he's not someone who wants to, admit ever that there's more work to do. So I think the natural response for him is to instead say, here are all the things that we have done, and here's the good stuff you're going to see more of next year. And I think there'll be a big focus on that.
Panel, we'll hold it right there.
Susan, there's also this, cliff that we're hanging on about healthcare. I'll be talking to the Senate Majority Leader John Thune tomorrow about where that goes. But the prospect of a bipartisan deal before premiums go up is diminishing and starting to look towards zero.
Yes, I think zero is approximately right for the prospects for there actually to be enactment of something. So we are pretty certain that the enhanced premium help that was passed during COVID is going to expire at the end of the month. And for millions of Americans, that means their healthcare costs are going to spike. This comes at a time when people are worried about what's happening with inflation, where we saw with the new jobs report, while the unemployment rate's still below 5%, historically, that's pretty good. It's the highest it's been in several years. So it's a time when people are kind of nervous about the economy. And we know that presidents' rhetoric do not have a very good history in persuading people that things are better than they feel they are when it comes to kitchen table issues that hit them right at home.
Yeah, that said, Matt, I mean, when you talk to a lot of the econ people, bipartisan, there are, if they're honest, they see sprouts in the economy. They see Q1, Q2, possibly taking off. And if that happened, the dynamic, the narrative could change.
Totally. And I think that's why the president and you talk to people in and around the White House, they hate that term affordability because number one, you're buying into what they view as a democratic messaging on it. So they want to talk very specifically about specific prices and how to lower those, right? Lowering energy prices, lowering beef, grocery, cutting interest rates. And I think what I'd be very interested to hear in the Wednesday night speech is whether or not Trump can take credit for what's gone down already, things like gas prices, and speak very specifically to lowering the cost of, again, these sorts of things, energy, beef, groceries, and the like, and really also pin it on Biden. Say, look, these rose during the last administration, but under my administration, they're going to go down and we're going to grow the economy. And again, also, one thing we've talked about a little bit is as the new Fed chair, whomever it is, whomever President Trump picks, takes office early next year, do rates come down pretty rapidly after that? And then what effect does that have on the economy? To your point, do those sprouts start blooming in mid 2026?
Yeah. Jackie, back to Susie Wiles. So you're saying that my request for that interview probably is not going to happen?
I texted her myself and I was like, hey, I got nothing back.
Yeah.
The president didn't respond to my text either. But you did have a few folks, the vice president who's already giving remarks today, saying something on the record. Caroline Leavitt topped her interview with Fox about this article. You also had Pam Bondi tweeting, "We are family. We are united." So I think that there's a lot there. I mean, this is not a short article. And the risk for the White House is there are going to be spaces now where there are opportunities for the president's critics to zero in on division within the White House. And I think that they have to figure out what their line is going to be, even when it comes to affordability. There was a line in the article about how there was a divided opinion among the president's inner circle on whether tariffs were a good idea. That the president is all in on them, but some of these price increases that we have seen have been tariff related. And we know that, of course, the president's made headwinds on energy costs. And that is, you can draw a direct line from Biden to Trump, the spike and then the dip, and it's a lot more easily explained. But in the context of people having a tough time affording their groceries and some of these products being exclusively imported, there's going to be fodder there for the critics of this administration to pick apart over the next few months. So I think that they're going to have to take a fine-tooth comb. And one thing about the pushback today, we didn't see any, to Susan's point, we didn't see any specific examples of where what she said was wrong or what was left out of context, what the rest of the story is that we're missing. And I think they're probably working to get a grip on that for the next couple of days.
Yeah. Susan, meantime, these attacks, it does seem like we're seeing an uptick. Definitely Australia is seeing an uptick, but across the world of anti-Semitic actions and attacks, and maybe even a jihad in the wake of what's happened in Gaza. And how each country deals with it is really interesting to see.
It's certainly true, this rise in anti-Semitism of great concern in Australia, which I understand has the largest number of Holocaust survivors of any place other than Israel. You look at this and you think of this brutal attack of people celebrating Hanukkah on the beach. It's just unspeakable. And in a place that has some of the toughest gun laws in the world. Australia now says it's going to tighten its gun law. Australia's leaders say they're going to tighten the gun laws more, and they're likely to do that. But it just makes your heart hurt when you look at these photos of people being attacked as they celebrate Hanukkah.
Yeah. Meantime, in our own country, this search for this Brown suspect is really befuddling. I don't think we've seen an investigation like this where the shooter is now gone. Like, we can't find him. We can't find any clue. For all the video cameras, we don't have the one where you can see him clearly. And this is quite something for authorities there to say everything is safe, go back to business as usual, but we don't know where the person is. Matt.
It's very distressing. And I think, look, the Brown leadership has been not very forthcoming, in my opinion, with a lot of the answers. I mean, I believe as the President Brown was asked the other day, what were these students doing in the classroom? Was it a club gathering? Was it a class? And she didn't know. And even the reporter said it's pretty concerning. And it brings you back to about a year ago. We had, the Luigi Mangione manhunt, which took about 5 days. but I feel like there was a lot more of attention paid to it. We had a lot more clear attention and photos on it. Where you're right, there seems to be no clear leads. The trail seems to have gone cold, and I guess more concerning for me is the people in charge, especially those at Brown and on the ground locally, don't seem to really be very forthcoming with a lot of the answers. And I guess that's very distressing. And you're right. Susan is right. There's 150,000 Jewish people in Bondi as well. And there was some hesitating on what the motives could be, but it seems very clear this was anti-Semitism. The problem is not gun laws. The problem is the fact that since October 7th, we've seen a very big increase in, the crimes and harassment against Jewish people, and it's very distressing.
Yeah, it is. And hopefully it turns around. Thanks so much. Now for a bit of history. On December 21st, 1891, educator and physician James Naismith introduced the game of basketball for the first time to his class at the International Young Men's Christian Association Training School in Springfield, Massachusetts. Naismith, who moved from Canada to the U.S. in 1890, struggled with finding an activity to keep his students engaged during New England's frigid winters. The game quickly caught on, with the first set of organized collegiate games being held just a couple of years later. Naismith went on to become the first basketball coach for Kansas University, living to see his creation be played as an Olympic demonstration sport in 1904. That'll do it for this week. You can hear more of this series at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts. Make sure to leave a rating and a review. We want to hear from you. For Matt, Susan, and Jackie, I'm Brett Baer. We'll see you next time.
Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.